Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. And before I forget, shout out to the channel sponsor, Nogi, BJJgear.com. Go check them out for some awesome rash guards, spats, shorts, and other training gear for Nogi, BJJ, submission grappling, MMA, etc. Now on to the question. We have a question today from an anonymous viewer who wants to know what is the difference between Muay Thai and kickboxing. Well, Muay Thai is a very specific combat sport and martial art, and kickboxing is a wide general term. I made a list. I wrote it out for you of a bunch of different combat sports which are kickboxing, forms of kickboxing. Here we go. Including but not limited to K1, Japanese kickboxing, American kickboxing, international rules kickboxing, Muay Thai, Sanda, sometimes known outside of China as sanshou, semi-contact karate, full contact karate, GWON, SAVATE, LETHWEI, Pradal Serey, professional taekwondo back in the 90s, that was a form of kickboxing, Dutch kickboxing, shoot boxing, which did allow standing submissions, not on the ground, and throws were also allowed, kind of like Sanda. Shidokan karate had a, 3-round format. First round was traditional karate kumite, second round was Muay Thai rules, and the third round was MMA rules. Combat karate, which is a modern karate format, and Chuck Norris's World Combat League had its own unique kickboxing rule set. All of those sports and a bunch of others that I didn't even mention are considered kickboxing. Why? Because they're sports where you can punch and you can kick and the fight stays on the feet. So if there's a downed fighter, you wait for that guy to get up before you fight again, and if he can't get up, you win. So that's kickboxing. It is a general term. So what is Muay Thai? Muay Thai is a very specific sport from Thailand. It is the Thai national sport. What are the rules of Muay Thai? Well, it's a pretty broad rule set, at least if you look at Lumpini Boxing Stadium rules, which do differ from some other organizations. If you look at amateur Muay Thai rule sets in various international organizations, they will differ from Lumpini Boxing Stadium rules. The gist of it is you can strike with any part of the body except for your head, so no headbutts under Lumpini Boxing Stadium rules. No wrestling or judo techniques. That's what the official rule set of Lumpini Boxing Stadium says, although that's kind of loosely interpreted. By wrestling or judo techniques, they mean no grabbing the legs, like no double leg takedowns, no single leg takedowns, no hip throws, basically. Muay Thai practitioners use a lot of sweeps and trips and throws that are totally used in wrestling and judo, and a lot of people don't even realize it because they're wearing boxing gloves. The last time I was at Lumpini Boxing Stadium, I saw, for example, one of the fighters use a golf swing takedown, same golf swing takedown that Kerry Colott used in the Olympics on his way to winning a gold medal for wrestling. Okay, that's totally a wrestling technique, but it's totally used in Muay Thai. So those rules definitely need to be clarified a little bit more. But anyway, you can throw elbows, you can throw knees, you can strike inside the clinch. And there are a lot of cultural tendencies. I mean, there's a bunch of tradition in Muay Thai. For example, every fight starts with an epic dance battle. I'm not joking. Muay Thai fights in Thailand are set to music. They have these hornpipes, they have drums, it's very loud. There's this loud music playing throughout the fight. Before the fight, during the fight, after the fight, they play this music. And before the fight, the fighters come into the ring, they trace the ring with their hands, they bow 3 times, and then they do a very specific dance. It's called the Ramsey or the Wai Crew. And there's a bunch of cultural significance behind this. There's a bunch of tradition behind it, depending on which training camp they trained at, who their coach was, where they learned it from, etc. And occasionally they will actually dance battle. A common maneuver in the Wai Crew is, miming shooting a bow and an arrow, and sometimes they will taunt the other guy by miming shooting arrows at him. And then the other guy will respond with some movement of his own to basically say, oh yeah, well, you're going to do that, I'm going to do this, right? And it's interesting, it's fun. The Thai people love it. There's a lot of gambling that goes on in these big stadiums. Gambling is technically illegal in Thailand. But when it comes to Muay Thai fights and betting on the fights, people tend to look the other way. It's a big deal. Another big difference you'll notice with Muay Thai fights is they tend to start out slowly. And I'm talking about fights in Thailand. This is a Thai cultural tendency. One of the big differences between, say, Muay Thai and Dutch kickboxing and also GWON because they technically have the same rules. The same rules. It's all Muay Thai rules. But those fights look totally different. GWON it's not super popular. It's a Korean form of Muay Thai, basically. Heavily influenced by taekwondo technique. So you'll see these fighters using a lot of spinning kicks under Muay Thai rules. It's like if you took taekwondo fighters and gave them Muay Thai rules, it's what they would have done with it. And then Dutch kickboxers, they tend to have much more aggressive training than the Thai boxers, right? They start hard, they try to finish hard. Whereas in Thailand, while everybody's placing their bets in the stadium, it is a cultural tradition to start out slow, give the people time, right? Milk the crowd a little bit, and then ramp up the action gradually until the last round where they're just going nuts. It's how people like to see the fights go. Also, there are other cultural tendencies from Thailand which come out in Muay Thai fights in Thailand, which is one of the big ones is touching somebody with the sole of the foot. Now, the teep or the push kick it's a very important technique in Muay Thai. But you'll notice as soon as that first teep lands with bad intentions, it's kind of like saying it's on. It's on. It's considered very rude to touch somebody with the sole of your foot in Thailand because the feet are considered dirty. And the Thai people have this, it's almost like a culture of extreme politeness, which we don't really see in the West. Not to say that people in the West can't be polite. It's just this culture of conformity and politeness and social propriety that is very, very different from Western culture. And so to touch somebody with your foot, it bears very different cultural meaning than it would in the West. In the West, you're in a fight, you're in a kickboxing match, somebody front kicks you, you're like, okay, I'm going to do some other technique to counter that. In Thailand, it's kind of like flipping somebody the middle finger, like, screw you, buddy. Which is a very strange thing since it is such a big part of the sport of Muay Thai. Anyway, I've rambled on quite a bit. There are many differences culturally, stylistically, rule-wise between all of these combat sports. Some are subtle, some are big, but yeah, man. My advice, if you really want to understand the differences between Muay Thai and other forms of kickboxing, watch a lot of Muay Thai. We live in this wonderful era where we have the internet, and you can watch Muay Thai fights any time of the day on the internet, as many as you want. Watch a fight every day. It's very educational. Thanks for your question. Once again, thanks to NoGiBJJGear.com for sponsoring the channel. Go check them out. Use my code Ramsey10 for a 10% off discount on all your purchases there. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.